Hey everybody, this is Tracy here for another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here tonight to recap Shots Fired Season 1, Episode 4, which was titled Hour 4 Truth. And I'm telling you, if you are not watching Shots Fired, you are missing a really great show, and looks like next week is going to be on fire. That's all I can say. So if you haven't watched it, download the Fox app and get caught up, because I'm telling you, this is a great show. So the show opens with Preston getting a phone call. He was in the bed sleep, and then he gets up and he gets in the car and drives off. And then we've learned that he's going to meet Ashe, because remember when the episode ended last week, she found Corey. So Corey is there, and he's getting ready to tell them that he witnessed the murder of Joey Campbell. And so he says that two cops chased Joey, and that when they caught up with him, they threw him to the ground. And then the two cops were like standing over him when an older white man who was dressed in black military gear came over, and he stood over Joey and shot and killed him. So then he says that a few weeks later that the police tried to run him over, and he didn't know if it was because they knew that he had witnessed the murder of Joey Campbell, or if it was because they saw him talking to Preston and helping Preston out. So Preston wants to open an investigation, but Ashe says that, they can't rush into things because they need to verify that Corey is a credible witness. But Preston, he's so anxious and, ready to save the world that the two of them get on the phone, and they have a call with the guy from the Department of Justice. I think his last name is Carroll. And so Preston tells him that Corey, doesn't have a record, and that he's a high school dropout, and that he's African American. So when his superior hears that, he's basically like, let's not rush into this, because, the community is probably less likely to believe Corey, because he is a dropout and because he is a black kid. So of course Preston is upset that Carol, didn't jump on it and tell them to move ahead with the investigation. And so he made some comment to him, but then Carol counters and asks him, how is the investigation of Jesse Carr going, like reminding him that that's why he's there. So Ashe steps in, to pull Carol back and, to the subject at hand. And so she asks him if they can place Corey in protective custody. And so he says that he'll think about it. Over at Joshua Beck's house, it's late at night, and his son hears something outside. And so he was so cute, he jumps up out of bed and put on his like superhero cape, and then he goes outside to investigate. But of course, when he opens the door, the alarm goes off, and so it wakes up Beck and his wife Carrie. And Beck gets his gun and he goes outside to see what's going on. And then when he turns the corner of the house, he sees his son in the yard, and he's looking up at the side of the house. And we see that somebody has spray painted Killer Cop in red paint on the side of the house. So Preston and Ashe, they're at breakfast, and they are at each other's throats again over how Preston handled the situation with Carol. And she's basically telling him that he shouldn't have brought up the subject of Joey Campbell, and that he needs to trust her instincts, because she knew that if they just, presented it to Carol without having done any kind of investigation and to bring any kind of proof, that he would not have went along with opening up the case, which was the exact thing that happened. Ashe goes to the college campus to find Jesse's weed dealer, because remember, there was weed found in the glove compartment of his car the day that he was killed. And so the guy that she's told to talk to says that Jesse wasn't one of his customers, and as far as he knew, Jesse didn't smoke weed. And that if he did smoke weed, he wouldn't have gone to the hood, looking for it, because his weed is just as good as anybody else's. And, just to let you know, remember the frat brothers said in the last episode that Jesse had gone to Gates Barbecue, and they were like, well, we just figured, he really liked that barbecue and that's why he was over there. So at the same time, Preston goes to see the sheriff to ask him for documents on all of the police officers. And the sheriff says that it will take a few days, but Preston says that he needs it immediately. So the two have like a brief exchange where Preston feels that the sheriff is telling him that he needs to know his place. And so he kind of checks the sheriff like, who the hell you think you're talking to? So outside, Joshua Beck's dad has come to the sheriff's office to see his son. And he's telling Joshua that he and his wife have decided to mortgage their house to help cover his legal fees. But Joshua says that he doesn't want them to do that, that he's going to figure it out on his own. So Preston is walking outside with the box of records when the sheriff comes out after him and asks if he wants to go for a ride. So while they are out, the sheriff pulls over this white pickup truck, with the Confederate flag on the front. And on the back of it is a sticker that says armed because you're dangerous or something like that. So they get out of the car and the sheriff, he goes up to the window and the guys are like, what did you stop us for? So it turns out to be 3 white guys. And I think it was a father and 2 sons. And we know that at least one of the guys was his son. So he tells them to get out of the car and to face the truck. And then he tells Preston to search the guys. And so, of course, the guys didn't want this black man searching them. And so the basis of the whole stop was he pulled them over because they weren't wearing seatbelts, but he was also trying to teach Preston a lesson where he was telling him that it's really hard to police in a community where people don't like or respect you. So the white people don't want black police officers stopping them, and then the black residents don't want the white cops in their neighborhood. He says, but you do the best that you can to try and get along with everybody and to do your job. So once again, Preston, overspeaks and says something that he shouldn't say, and he basically tells the sheriff that, he's protecting officers that are going around killing innocent citizens, and the sheriff is like, what are you talking about? And don't be making accusations if you don't have proof. But thankfully, Preston had enough sense to shut his damn mouth and not, reveal what they know about Joey Campbell. So then we go to a town hall meeting that's being held at a local high school by Governor Emmons, and Shemeeka Campbell and her son Shawn, they're arriving. And so we learn that Pastor Janae, she has kind of like partnered with the governor, and the governor thanks her for bringing the issues about the school. And I think the school that the black kids go to is called Westgate or West Gateway School, and they're dealing with overcrowding and low test scores and everything, and they're supposed to be shutting the school down. And so she's saying that what she wants to do is save the school and invest $3 million into, improving conditions and bringing in better teachers. And then she says that she's going to allow some of the kids to go from, I guess they're going to bus some of the kids to ease the overcrowding to a school called Lofton, which is like a predominantly white school in a better neighborhood. So, of course, the white parents got up in arms, and that conversation took place. Like, they don't want the black kids from the poor neighborhood coming to their school. They're going to be bringing guns and violence, and they're going to need metal detectors. It's just all kind of ignorance, but that's the kind of stuff that takes place, at these meetings when people are ignorant and closed-minded. And so the governor mentions that, once they hear Shawn speak, that they're going to change their opinion. And then she goes on to say that I think the lady who was the news person who was moderating the town hall meeting asked the governor, where was the $3 million going to come from? And she says that it won't be public money, that the money was going to be donated by Arlen Cox and the Cox Group Financial. So like half the audience started laughing, and then the other half was like, what the hell are you talking about? So remember, Arlen Cox is the guy that wants to build the huge prison complex that's going to have the hospital and the college and the high school and whatever else is going to be on this campus. And so when the when Shawn, is getting ready to speak, he's like listening to all the hateful comments that the parents are making. And so then he walks out and Shemeeka goes after him. And we have Preston and Ashe, and they meet to go over the case. And so Preston thinks that Jesse was upset that his frat brother sent him to a black neighborhood for barbecue and weed after he was beat up by the black guy. And so he may have been like angry and agitated when Officer Beck stopped him. And then Ashe is saying that, maybe something went wrong, maybe there was a wrong move, and that it really wasn't racially motivated. And then they, get to talking about the records that Preston got from the sheriff's office, and they realized that Lieutenant Breland was the first cop on the scene for both Jesse's murder and Joey Campbell's murder. So Preston and Ashe, bring in an elderly black woman who claims that Lieutenant Breland killed her husband. And she says that he harassed them for years, and then one day he arrested her husband on like a bogus traffic violation, and that her husband died several months later, or a month later, from all the stress. And she was saying how he was 72 years old, and in the current times, he's still dealing with the same racial issues that he dealt with as a child, and that it was just too much to take. So I think what they're doing is they're going through all the records of all the arrests and trying to interview the people to see if there's like a pattern of racial profiling. So then we have a scene where a white guy goes to the apartment where Corey was staying, and he breaks in and opens fire with a gun that has like a silencer on it. So it was definitely going to be a hit. But when he turns on the lights, he realizes that there was nobody in the apartment, and that what he had actually shot into was a bunch of pillows. And then the scene goes over to Corey and his family being taken into protective custody. So at this point, we realize that Ashe was able to secure the protective custody for Corey and his family and I'm not sure if it was from Carol, or if she had pulled strings with another department to get the order taken care of. Then we have another scene with Preston and Ashe where they go to the sheriff's department, and this time they want to talk to Deputy Brooks, and they want to talk to him about Lieutenant Breland. But Brooks says that, that's his superior, and that he can't be getting caught up in Ashe and Preston's mess. And then he tells them that if they want to ask him any more questions, that they need to go to the union lawyer, because he'll need representation. So Governor Emmons goes to visit Arlen Cox to discuss the prison complex and this money that he's supposed to be donating. So after joking about the debacle of a town hall meeting she had, Cox hands her a report on his prison complex, but wants to up the percentage from 85% occupancy to 88% occupancy. And so Emmons, she won't agree to raise the numbers. And then we learn that the state, so with this deal, the state will get 50% of the profits from the prison, and that Cox will be paid by the state $30,000 per prison. And what was just so interesting about this whole thing is it's the whole school to prison pipeline that they're highlighting. But it's like, how do you determine how many people are going to be housed in your prison complex? And then to be sitting there saying, okay, well, we'll do 85%. Well, no, I want to raise that number to 88%. And then Emmons kind of points out that basically they get these numbers up by, racially profiling people, causing like a traffic stop, and then the traffic stop escalating to, bigger charges and to felony charges. So there was a incident in Sacramento, California the other day, which would be like a perfect example. So this guy is walking down the street minding his own business when he decides to cross the street. And then the police officer pulls up and tells him that he's jaywalking. And then he attacks the guy, beats the guy up in the street. And then, of course, the guy gets arrested, and they probably want to charge him for, battery on a police officer, resisting arrest, and all these other charges. But thankfully, there were witnesses, and there was somebody videoing it, and they ended up dropping the charges against the guy. But that would be like a perfect example of how the police stop people, then cause situations to escalate so that they can get greater charges against people. Then Preston and Ashe, they confront Lieutenant Breland about racial profiling, and I think they were over at the school because remember he coaches the football team, and so Breland is still preaching that he is doing what's best for everybody, and how parents call and thank him for the work that he does after he arrests their kids after he's racially profiled them. And then he tells them a story about his dad and how his dad was very abusive to his mom, and he hated his dad and thought that he was like a really bad guy. And then the dad got cancer and died. And at the funeral, people kept coming up to him, telling him what an amazing guy that his dad was, and sharing all these stories about the good things that he had done to help people. And he said, so at that moment, he realizes that there is no good and bad. It's just the way people are perceived. And so Breland tells the two of them that that they don't belong there, and that Ashe is trying to make a name for herself while Preston is trying to rid himself of demons. Or it might be vice versa because he didn't say who he was accusing of what. So I'm just guessing that's what it is. But then the more I think about it, it could be flipped. So then we have a scene where it's the first day of school and Shawn is arguing with his mom about going to Lofton. He says that he doesn't want to go and nothing she can say or do is going to make him go. And then Shemeeka breaks down and says that he has to go to the school because she doesn't want what happened to Joey to happen to him, and that she has to do everything that she can to provide him a better chance as a successful future. So of course Shawn doesn't want to see his mom cry and he wants to make her happy. So then he's on the school bus and there's probably like 20 kids on the bus and they're on their way to Lofton. And then when they get there, they're nervous as they're getting off the school bus. And then this kid walks down the steps with a box and he stops in front of Shawn. So Shawn is like, oh my God, like what is this boy getting ready to do? But when the boy opens the box, it had some t-shirts in it. And they were basically welcoming the black kids to their school. And he introduces himself. And so it was just like a really nice welcoming, of the white kids to the little black kids. And don't know if it's going to last, but it was a good start to help them relax and feel better about the decision that had been made for their education. So then we go over to Governor Emmons, and she is like catching it from all sides. Sarah is telling her that going and doing the town hall meeting probably wasn't a good idea, and that she doesn't believe that Governor Emmons believes in the school to prison pipeline, that she wants all kids to get a good education and not end up in prison. And so then we have Governor Emmons telling her to get Arlen Cox on the phone, but I don't think we ever saw a scene where she actually talked to him. Then in the next scene, we have her and she's at home and she's with her daughter and her husband. And the daughter, basically is telling her that the town hall was a bad idea, but that she agrees with the lady who got up and said that Governor Emmons was full of crap because she wouldn't send her daughter to the Westgate school that's in the black community. And then the daughter was kind of hinting at, she wouldn't mind going to the school, but then Emmons and her husband, they like shut that down real quick. And then the daughter, she was telling her that, you send your daughter to a $30,000 a year private school while telling other people that they need to deal with the poor schools in their communities. And so the husband, he was basically like, both of y'all shut up because you're not going to that school and you're going to stay at the school that you're at. It is not even up for discussion. So he was very uncomfortable with the conversation. When Ashe was at the college campus talking to the drug dealer, she bought a $20 bag of weed from him to get tested to compare it to the weed that they found at in Jesse's car. So they get the results and she tells Preston that there are over 600 strands of marijuana in North Carolina. I'm like, God damn. But the weed from the college guy doesn't match the weed that was found in Jesse's car, but the weed that Jesse had matches the weed that was found in the bedroom of Joey Campbell. So now they're trying to figure out, like, did Jesse buy the weed from whoever Joey Campbell was getting his weed from? But then they said that couldn't be because they were in like two neighborhoods that were really far apart from each other. So now they're thinking that maybe the weed was planted in Jesse's car, like the weed that was confiscated from Joey was planted in Jesse's car or something like that. But anyway, there's a connection between the weed Jesse had in his car and the weed that Joey had in his bedroom. So Carol finally agrees to open the case on Joey Campbell's death, and Preston and Ashe go out to celebrate. So they're at that blues club that Ashe seems to love so much, and so she decides to get up and dance, and she's telling Preston to come dance with her, but Preston is like, moving really slow. So Ashe, she's out on the dance floor swerving around. So then this guy comes up behind her and starts dancing with her. And then Preston, he's looking all sad and deflated. But then the guy becomes like overly aggressive with Ashe. So Preston goes over, to intervene and to save Ashe. And then the guy gets all up in his face, telling him he's a boy and he's weak, and that Ashe isn't his woman. So then the guy had a friend with him, and the friend comes over and he's talking trash. And so Preston, I'm like, oh my God, like, don't shoot him or get in a fight, because that's the last thing you guys need. But then Ashe jumps in between them and was like, he'll F you up or something like that. And so the guys look at her and they was like, oh man, we should have known she was crazy. And then they walk away. So Ashe is trying to joke about it, but Preston is kind of feeling like he had let her down. But she says that she knew that, he would have took care of things, but she just didn't want to bring any attention to them. So the show ends with, before I tell you how the show ends. So then Preston and Ashe end up back at the hotel room, and they making like goo-goo eyes at each other, like they about to get busy. And then he reaches down and takes the hotel room door key out of her hand. And I'm just like, no. I don't want you two to end up in bed together, because remember, Ashe has slept with his brother Maceo. And then what happened to Maceo and the dad? Like, did the dad go back to wherever he came from? But anyway, Preston opens the door, and Ashe, she sachets in, because I think she's ready to get her some Preston. But then he tells her he'll see her in the morning and gives her the key and lets the door close. So I'm just like, thank you, Jesus, because we just really didn't need that drama right now. Maybe by the end of the season, they can get together, but not right now. We need them to be focused. So the show ends with Pastor Janae, and she's at her church preaching about truth and, people living their truth, when a white family walks in, and then, she welcomes them and tells them to, come on in and sit down. And then we go over to Deputy Beck's house, and him, his wife, and the two boys, they're all in the bed together, and he like has his hands, protectively wrapped around them. And then it ends with Lieutenant Breland, and he's at his desk, and he's reviewing Ashe's, I guess, like her personnel files or the files on the shooting. Oh, and then there was another part I forgot, that earlier in the show, Preston, I think when they were at the bar, Preston asked Ashe if she was so passionate about the Joey Campbell case because she's trying to atone for, because remember, she shot and killed a kid in the line of duty. And so he asked her if she's trying to atone for that. And she said she didn't really know. And then that was when she jumped up and told him to come out on the dance floor and dance with her. So like I said, it was another great episode. So guys, go ahead and leave your comments, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel. And please share with other viewers that you think might be interested. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.